Okay, good morning again. Sorry for not being on time. You know, it's always technical difficulties, especially on a Monday morning. Everybody have a great Mother's Day yesterday? Yeah? Even those of us who really aren't mothers, mine are four. I have four-legged creatures but they gave me a good Mother's Day. No problems in the house. We all went outside.
Was this overbooked?
Yes. Yes.
So where are we supposed to sit?
As I made an announcement earlier, this is being recorded, so if you don't want to be on film forever, because this will be shown at a later date to those who choose to archive the session. We're not taking roll by who really signed up, so it was a first come, first served seating. There's going to be other opportunities for the training. We have today, we have a 2 to 4 this afternoon. We have training tomorrow in Fort Worth. I know none of you want to go to Fort Worth. That one will not be streamed. But on Wednesday, we have a 10 to 12 in this room, and it'll be streamed so you can watch it from your desktop. How many of you have watched from your desktop before? It's very easy, very nice. Better if you have earphones so that you can hear from your desk and not disturb anyone else. But you're going to see everything you see right here. If you don't make any of these classes, Celia, why don't you give your chair to this lady? You can take mine. I'll be glad to stand.
Can you ask him to move the camera so we can actually see her? Oh, okay.
Can you see me now?
Your shoulder.
You can see my shoulder? Oh, I know. I'm supposed to stand back here. I'm sorry. I forget. I'm a traveling talker. And so they make me confined here, so I apologize. I'll stay here for the rest of the class. Jason, you can't walk either. Okay? All right. Again, I apologize for the room. With Chilton being down, we're kind of limited on where we can do these video conferences. But this one will be recorded for the future. You can watch it on an archive session, or you can go back and watch it from your desk. The purpose for today is to talk about the new changes in travel and to introduce to you our preferred vendor for travel agency. We have two members from the travel agency here today, Liz and Jason. I know you can't see them there at Discovery Park, but believe me, they're in the room. They'll talk to you shortly about what their program does for us. What I want to do is just introduce the changes that we've made and what's going on in travel. If you're here expecting for us to go through all of the guidelines, that will come at a later date. We're only going to touch briefly on the what's hot in travel. And we'll discuss a little bit about the forms. Then I'm going to turn it over to Jason, who will drive you through the instrument you will use to book airfare, to book your hotel, and to book your rental cars. Now, again, listen closely. That's just booking. That's all we're talking about today is a booking tool that hopefully will assist you instead of going to Travelocity or Orbit or to all those places you've been before. You'll click on this, and then you don't have to sit and wait for us to come online and either pay for your airfare, or you don't have to go look up the traveler. But you'll be able to do all of this online. And I think you'll like what you see. Yes, ma'am?
You can still do it the old way, right?
You can still do it the old way, but what you're going to miss out are some great discounts. So, again, our suggestion, recommendation, is this is our preferred travel vendor. And we'll show you some other slides. I'll just go ahead and go on into the plan here. Discovery Park, you can see the screen. You have my PowerPoint up?
No.
No? Sorry, you're missing out. How about now?
There we go.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, good deal. System, are you there? How about HSC?
Oh.
Hi, System.
Here.
Hi, my friend.
Hello.
And hi, Mary.
Hi.
Good to see you, Mary. That's Mary Atkins, if y'all don't know. That's over in our new BSC. And then HSC, are you guys online? Anybody from HSC? No. No? All right. Let's talk about our hot topics. Meal reimbursements. Per diem, thing of the past. Everything we do now will require a receipt. If you have someone in travel status today, don't worry about it. We're going to help you get through it. Don't panic and don't, just ask them to get as many receipts as possible. Everything must be supported with your receipt. Can you as a department set limits? Absolutely, if that's what you want to do. If your DEP ID holder says, I'll pay your travel, I'll pay for your meals, but I'm not only going to pay up to $50 a day, that's great. We're going to do whatever your DEP ID holder wants. We're not going to change your local department rules if you have any. If you didn't have any before and you want to start some now, go for it. We don't have a problem with that. We do have some new travel forms. Both the forms and training on those forms are available on the BSC website. And what you'll notice now is both the approval form, which we're probably going to change the name of that. That's more of an advance request form than it is an approval form. So both the approval form, soon to be advance form, and the travel voucher are contained in one Excel spreadsheet. So always be careful because, there's tabs on Excel spreadsheets. So if you're doing advanced travel where you need us to do something for you, you'll fill out that form. If you did not receive any advanced travel from us, then you'll skip that advance form and you'll just go straight to the travel voucher. Again, we'll get you some more training on that in the future. The purpose for today is to talk about our online booking tool. We just want to remind everyone that we did a survey back in July, and what you all represented to us is that it would be favorable if you had one place to go to try to reserve travel. And that's really what we've done today. That's what you're going to see. That's what CTP brings to the table. So what you see today, definitely a work in progress. We need your help to make it even better. And I'm going to be real honest with you. When I got started with CTP, I was asking them for the world. I wanted them to be able to know what you were thinking before you were thinking it. I wanted them to be able to book the airlines and then give you the voucher all in one fast roll-up. You didn't have to do anything but sit there. What they've told me is they can't do that. They want me to pay more money to do that. And unfortunately, I have no budget, so I can't do that. So today, again, we'll show you what they can do for us, and I think it's pretty impressive for, I think, where we are in our travel history. It's going to initially be available only to a pilot group. And yep, Ruth, I know you want to be part of the pilot group, but understand that our pilot group needs to be those departments that travel more frequently than others. Because, of course, a pilot's only as good as who gets in the system and can help you work it. So if your department doesn't travel a lot, don't get your feelings hurt. You're not going to be part of the pilot. But we will get you on the system as fast as we can. Because everybody in this room already has a travel profile, even if you've never traveled before. Because we loaded up all your names. If you're on payroll, you're in the system. You may not be in there correctly with who needs to approve your travel, but you're in the system. Okay? And that's a long discussion. That's why CTP was over there laughing hysterically, because we've been a little bit confused on some of our terminology and what we need to do. But you'll understand that better when we get in the system. So again, this is going to replace the task of you having to put an airline ticket on hold, call up the BSC Travel, or come over and sit there while we pay for that ticket. The best thing for me about this is, again, you can go online, reserve the ticket. It's going to flow to your DEP ID holder. Your DEP ID holder is going to say, I approve the purchase of this ticket, and then we're going to pay for it, and you never have to do anything else again. Good. You don't have to fill out a travel voucher for that one airfare. And if you choose Enterprise rental car, you won't have to pay, you won't have to do anything with a future travel voucher on that. Those are the only two things we have going right now. You can go into this system and you can book your airfare, you can make a hotel, and then you can rent a car, and we'll pay for 2 or 3 of those. Then you just have to come back with with a travel voucher for your meals and for the hotel stay. Again, it's going to take receipts for everything you turn back into us, though. Any questions so far about what I've said? Yes, ma'am.
So if you turn the receipts for everything, for meals, for example, there's still a limit on how much you can spend per day, as the per diem was?
Not from our standpoint. From our standpoint, if you spend, well, I know nobody would do this. If you spend $200 for lunch today and only a nickel for breakfast and a dime for dinner, and so you turn in a voucher for $200.15 and you have receipts to support that, and your DEP ID holder approves that voucher, we pay.
Departmental rule setting.
Yes. And yes.
Excuse me. For international travel, where often you can't get receipts depending on what country you're in, how is that going to be handled?
Okay, I know you guys probably can't. Did y'all hear those questions? The first question had to do with are there any limits, the per diem limits, and that's again where we talk about the department can set the limits. The second question here has been with international travel, it's sometimes difficult to get receipts. So I'm looking to my travel experts. You got to come all the way over here so they can see you. This is Celia Wisenhunt, in case y'all don't know her.
Good morning.
There she is, right there.
There I am.
Hi, Celia.
Hi, guys. And we understand, especially for international travel, it is very difficult sometimes to get receipts. But what we ask is that you do your due diligence to do the best that you can. In the past, it's been kind of a, the per diem for international is $100 a day, and we get a voucher that says they were gone 5 days and the meals were $500. And there's no attempt to get receipts to back that up. We're always going to have exceptions, and there's always going to be challenges in getting receipts. But what we want to, and that story just needs to be told on the voucher. Does that make sense? Just letting us know that, here these 3 meals that we're claiming we could not get receipts. And that's what we need to know, the story. But that needs to be the exception, not the rule, as it has been in the past. We're kind of backing that up a little bit. Okay.
Yes, for research grants for the Office of Research, there's been a couple of grants that they've done away with receipts, keeping it per diem to keep it simple since they're out for months at a time. Mm-hmm. That's not an exclusion item that now.
It still needs to be receipts as best as you can. Yes, ma'am.
Right. They can still limit per the grant. So if they're the top dollar for their meals or whatever, and they're giving them $50 a day to eat, we still need to know that. The grants office and the Office of Research, whatever, at the different institutions, they're called different things. But your grant folks that typically looked at your travel will continue to look at your travel through this process. So nothing's going to change on that. So that makes sense?
No. Well, I know that we have the grant that actually went from needing to deal with receipts and encumber some of it to under per diem and no longer needed to do the receipts since many of the travelers were out months at a time. So my question is does this new rule then trump, so to speak, that new?
Gotcha.
That's what I was asking.
Okay. The question is if your grant has long ago done away with receipts and went straight to a per diem, she wanted to know if our new rules changed that. And I'm not sure did we think about that before, or was that still?
I think that we'll need to address that specifically. I mean, I think we would still, let's talk about that specifically, I think.
Yeah.
We did, and if this is a specific grant, I mean, we met with ORS and discussed these rules in general, and they supported getting the receipts to back up the per diems.
Right.
So if we need to look at it a little more specifically, please let me know when we're done, and I'll address that. We'll check into it.
Here's our official answer. If you have that specific grant, we're going to have to get with the grants office to make sure we understand what the grant says. And, of course, we'll abide by what those grant rules say. But that determination will need to be made by the Office of Research or the grants office. But we'll work with you. So I think that's the better way to look at it there. Okay? You had a question in the back? Yes.
Student travel, like
airfare do the same as we would employee?
Yes. Yes.
The question-
Student and employee, I'm sorry. Student, yeah, the question was, with student travel, would it be covered as it would be an employee in this booking tool? And it will be, yes.
Another question? Yes.
On rental cars, will we put the gasoline on the travel voucher since it's paid, since they don't know how much their gas will be? Because we usually get gas receipts.
Right, because the question was about, with rental cars, would you have the gas receipts on the travel voucher? Any out-of-pocket expenses, which that would be an out-of-pocket expense, that would need to go on the voucher after the trip to get reimbursed for the travel. This is just a rental fee, or, the cost for renting the car.
Right. We're not talking about filling out forms. So again, don't get confused with, do you need to put it on a request to travel? That's the one thing that we don't want. If your department wants to have a request to travel so that they get permission before they actually travel, that's an internal process that you guys can control. The only time we need to know about your request to travel is really when you're requiring an advance of monies before you travel. This process, the CTP online booking tool, we hope to do away with as much of the advance needs that you have, and that your travelers utilize the individual billed travel card, the IBT, that you can. Okay? Yes.
So you're indicating that we don't need to send that request to travel form along with the travel voucher when we scan it over?
Right. The question was, do you need the form when it comes over? It'll be all part of the package. Again, remember, this is change in terminology too. I think before we used either a form called the request to travel or a form that said approval to travel or something else. There was one other name. What we're saying is the request to travel, or the authority for which you travel, is between you and your department. What we're looking for is the authority to expend your funds, which deals with, again, booking and paying for the airfare. So our travel voucher and our advance form is there, but there's no such thing from where we are with this request to travel. You're welcome to have one. You're welcome to make it as an attachment to what we have, or you can do whatever you normally do today. Yes?
So the ART form is only for requests for advancing?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
And hopefully with this tool, you won't really need that advance any longer, but you'll be able to have your airfare and any rental car paid for. Hi, Deb.
Hi.
Those will be paid for by us, and the traveler won't have to worry with that. Yes.
Will we be able to use CTP for visitors? Say we're bringing in a seminar speaker and we want to buy their ticket for them instead of reimbursing them. We can?
Yes. Can you use CTP for prospective people or for speakers, etc.? Yes, and Jason will go over that with you whenever he introduces the product. Okay? It's very simple. I think you'll like it. I like it so much I want more, but like I said, Jason and Liz won't give it to you without paying. Rhonda.
In regards to the vice presidents, so right now when the vice presidents travel, they have to submit an RTT, and that lets us know when they're going to be out and where they're going to be. So under this new process, they won't need to submit an RTT, or can we still require that? They have to have an RTT so we can approve that. Because the flip side of that is if you're just looking for an account manager authority, they can't sign for their own reimbursement. Somebody else is going to have to do that. So
correct. The question is, for those people who their supervisor wants to know of their traveling, for example, President Rollins at UNT Denton may need to know when the VPs are traveling, can he still require the request to travel form? Absolutely. So Rhonda, that's something you guys will want to just make sure that in a cabinet meeting that those VPs know what process you're looking at locally. We are not looking for that form. Now, we're not going to complain if you send it to us or if it's attached to your voucher, but we're not looking for that form. Again, and we've had quite the discussion on that. From a supervisor standpoint, honestly, we don't know who your supervisors are. We could go to payroll and figure out who you report to, but in the old system where manually someone signed, I could say that Celia's my supervisor, send the form through, we're like, oh, okay. What we need is who has the authority to spend the money. That's from our viewpoint, not necessarily from yours. You want to know who's traveling. You want to give them the authority to travel so you can keep that process going in your own. Did that answer your question?
With regards to signing their own
We're-
reimbursement as a Debt ID holder.
Right, we don't want that either, and we're going to have to deal with that.
Okay.
We may not show that to you today, but it's something that's on our radar screen. We know what process we go through in ePro. We just don't have that same setup in this yet, or
That'll be the goal.
that's our goal, correct.
I think you just answered my question. We're not gonna have to pull a form for people to sign. We're just gonna have it sent through an approval process like you wrote. Okay, great.
On the advanced travel, that's correct. That's what you'll do. And we also take electronic signatures. So when you see the Excel spreadsheet and you're doing your travel voucher, you can have someone electronically sign that and pass it on to us. We really like the electronic signature because we know it's password protected and we know who's signing it. We can actually read their signature. Okay? See what else I have here. Yeah, Jan.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that about how you were gonna, the voucher itself, are you gonna require electronic signatures or just a routing?
On the travel itself, we're not requiring electronic signatures. We say we accept electronic signatures. We like them because we're able to read them. But you can print documents, you can sign it, and then you can scan it back to us. Everything that we do now, we like for it to be sent to us electronically.
I was hoping you would have a routing, just a routing like you do ePro, where you don't bother with signing at all.
Well, the advanced booking we do, and our future goal, if we can, my future goal, honestly, is to get you where when your traveler travels, their receipts come to you electronically. All you do is drop and drag them into a voucher, and then that'll route, and you're all done. But I'm not there yet. We're working on it. Okay? So just hang in there. I was hoping to roll out this whole product and give you a great big package, but it's not happening. Here's an example of the things that you're going to get through CTP. Behind the scenes, we've negotiated with American Airlines, with Southwest, with JetBlue. I keep saying Frontier, but they're making fun of me because they said I have not done a contract with Frontier. But anyway, there's some airfares out there that are negotiated rates. If you continue to go to American Airlines, we believe you're overpaying. We believe the contract we have attached behind CTP is the best deal you can get. And the best thing about that is the more we buy from American Airlines, the lower our prices get. Same thing with these others. That's what happens when you leverage your buying power and you spend a lot of money with the same group. They'll keep lowering your prices. So you'll get discounted rates by using CTP. If you go to Orbit or Travelocity or whatever, you'll get their discounted rates, but we don't think they're as good as the ones we have available. And is there a cost with online booking? Yes. It's going to cost you $7.50, but we believe we've saved you more than that on every airfare that you book through this system. It'll come through. I'm not sure. I think Jason will talk about that price when he shows you the instrument. Today, most of you, when you call Mean Green Travel, you have a $30 cost associated with that call. If you call Travel Corps in Fort Worth or Colwick Travel, you're paying $30 to get that ticketed. So if you have to do a full service with CTP, which means you just can't get the booking tool to work for you, or you want to talk to a live agent, instead of $30, it'll cost you $20. And for international online booking, again, your fee is $30. You can see that in comparison to the other travel agencies that we have been known to use in all of the UNT member institutions. So is there any question about the fee? Because oh yes, ma'am.
$750 for the airfare, $750 for the hotel, and $750 for the.
Again, Jason will go through that with you. I think it's $750 if you do them all at once, but I'll let him. He'll cover that, and he's probably going to tell me my time's up. And I want him to speak his full hour and a half because I think he's got a lot to show you. Please remember when Jason comes up to talk, he did not make any policy behind this. He's trying to take our travel guidelines and put them through the system so you know he's guiding you in the system according to the guidelines we have set up. Come on up, Jason, so you can get this thing going. This is Jason, and he'll guide you the rest of the way. And then we will be here till 11. And if we cannot answer your questions, I gotta get back over here so you can see. If we can't answer your questions before we leave today, please feel free to email them to the bsc@untsystem.edu, and we'll gather them all together. We'll get all the answers. We'll send them back out to all of you. Okay? Because we want to make sure we get through this entire program before we leave today. And because we have another one this afternoon, and we all like to eat, we're going to probably cut this thing off at a little after 11 so we can get all that done. Okay?
One last question.
Yes.
The PowerPoint, will you have it on BSC website?
Yes.
Great.
All right.
All right, so ultimately the online tool is the landing page where you're going to log in to actually access the online tool for your profiles and making travel arrangements or such. The site is this would be the site. It's concurrsolutions.com, and the site information is on the little cards and things that are placed on the desktops for y'all. Basically, you're going to log in with your login name and password, which I think that's kind of still to be determined. But the information is all in there. Once it's determined what your login information is going to be, I believe it's going to be in an email format ultimately when everything is said and done. So you'll log in with your login and your password. System takes you in. This is ultimately the to where it all is that too small? So ultimately, this is the home page or what it looks like when you first land into the travel site. You'll see there's some additional tabs at the top, some contact information as far as online assistance phone numbers, full service assistance phone numbers, even after hours numbers. Emphasis on the after hours. Utilize it for emergency type situations only. In the event you're stranded, a canceled flight, don't have a ticket, over the weekend type situation where the travel office is actually closed and you have to utilize that emergency service. Because there's a fee associated with every call made into that emergency service number. So if you're calling just to verify seating assignments or to verify flight status, I advise other methods aside from using that emergency service. But if, by all means, if you're stuck at the airport and you don't have a ticket, your flight's been canceled, then feel free to use that number. Just want to make you aware that there are fees associated with that. It is through a third-party company. Ultimately, when you land into the tool, the first place that any user is going to want to go and address is going to be their profile. By clicking the Profile tab, it takes you here, and there's a number of links on this page. A good number of these links take you to the main profile page. It's just a long loading page. So I'll go into the first one for you. You can see it has the name information, and this is all populated by the HR feed. So some of this information is already going to be put in here for you. It's just a matter of validating the information is accurate and then providing all of your required information like date of birth, gender for TSA, frequent traveler numbers. There are some phone number requirements in here as well. But anything that is required is going to be highlighted with this required in like an orangish yellow looking color, like the financial department ID number, but I believe that comes over from the feed, so that's not something that you have to provide. Work address information, if you want to provide your work address, you're welcome to. It's not required, as well as home address. Work phone number is required. You'll see that home phone number is listed as well. It's one or the other. You're not required to give your home phone number. Out of best practice, I do advise providing a mobile phone number. This information, just so you're aware, is not solicited. It's not provided to anybody. It's only used in the event of travel. So this information, if you don't provide it, something happens at night or over the weekend, the airlines will make an attempt to reach out to you. If it's the phone number information is not provided here, it's not provided to the carrier, so they can't reach out to you. They'll try to contact us, or they'll try any other number that they can find in the reservation. So best practice would be to put your mobile phone number in there, because usually when mishaps happen with travel, it's in the middle of travel, and your work phone number is likely not going to, suit that situation. Email addresses, you can have multiple email addresses in your profile. I believe it is up to 3. If there's going to be an instance where, like a spouse is wanted to be included in all of the traveler's arrangements, you can put that in there, and then they'll get communicated everything as if the traveler. Another example would be if there's going to be multiple travel arrangers, because you can actually delegate somebody to log in, address your profile for you, and book travel on your behalf in here by assigning an assistant. If there's situations where there's going to be more than one primary assistant, then you would have to designate one as a primary and then add the additional emails up here so that everybody stays in communication. When we get down to the assistants, I'll show you the difference between, there's 2 different levels of being an assistant. There's emergency contact information. Again, this is information that's just housed in the event something happens. We have contact information to try to reach out to people. Traveler preferences is more geared towards the traveler's specific preferences. The system does take all of that into account and looks specifically for those requests. So if we designate in the seat that we want an aisle seat, the system ultimately is going to be geared to looking only for aisle seats. If there's not an aisle seat available, the system will bypass the seat selection automatically. It'll give you an opportunity to go back and select a seat. It's just not going to grab one by default for you. If there is any conflict between travel policy of the university and the travel preference of the traveler, the policy of the university will trump the traveler preference every time. So if there's a conflict with, a certain carrier or something like that, the university is going to win. Anything that you put in here is transmitted to the carriers or the vendor that's being utilized. For instance, like the message to vendor for hotel, you can put away from ice machine, or something along those lines, and exactly how you type it in that box is how it's transmitted to the vendors, and that would get placed into every single hotel reservation, then would be notated away from the ice machine. A similar thing with the car, no red cars or Easy Pass or something like that as far as the toll things. Again, anything that you type in those boxes are transmitted exactly as you type them to the vendors. Frequent traveler programs. Comes up and has your air, car, rail even, and hotel all on one. It's just a matter of selecting the vendor. Most of the domestic or more heavily utilized vendors are moved to the top and they're coded in a color. So it's just a matter of selecting the vendor and then populating the number. Same thing with car as well as hotel. Now the hotel appears a little bit differently. As you'll see, they've got this pinkish purple looking color at the top. Concur considers them to be super chains, so it's like all of the Marriott brands. So you can put the Marriott number in one time versus putting a Marriott number, a Courtyard number, and so on and so forth. It'll apply it to all of its sister properties as well. So you can cut down on the number of numbers that you have to place in there initially. If you happen to have more than 5, which is very common, it's just a matter of filling out the 5, hitting save, and then it'll populate the numbers back here. And then just hitting add a program again and just repeat until you've gotten all the program numbers loaded in the system. This tool does have a direct connect with Southwest Airlines or Swabiz. So essentially the airfares that you would go and get on Swabiz that are only available through Swabiz are also available through Concur. The want to get away fares, the anytime fare, just as you would see it on Swabiz, it pulls that information directly into the tool. Because of that direct connect with Southwest Airlines, they're the only ticket credits that you'll actually see in this section of the travel profile. You can actually control your own credits through there. If you book a Southwest reservation through Concur and say, hypothetically, the trip gets canceled, you go back into Concur, you cancel that reservation, It will send the message to the carrier, cancel your trip, and automatically take your credit details and populate it right here into the system. So if you immediately need to go back to the tool and book a new Southwest reservation, you can go right back in, select your flights, and choose that credit to apply it towards your new flight itinerary without having to call to pick up the phone and speak with anybody. It'll do it right through the system for you. You can even add credits that were done outside of the tool. As long as they're valid, available credits, you can add them into the tool as well. Just providing the Southwest record locator, and I'm just going to put a fictitious name here just to show. And now it'll show up in here. So when you do a booking on Southwest Airlines now, when you get to the form of payment option, it'll ask you to choose, or it's not really making you choose a form of payment because the air card will be built in, but it's going to give you an option to say, hey, you've got this credit available, do you want to apply it? And it's just a matter of you checking the credit if you want to apply it, or not checking the credit and clicking next, and it'll just proceed based on what you choose. TSA information, the gender and date of birth are required. But they do have the options for the DHS redress number as well as the known traveler number. If you don't know what these two numbers are, they likely don't apply to you. It's usually the people who are more heavily scrutinized by security, and they have to fill out a form and get these numbers issued to them. Then when provided, they can expedite their security checkpoint. Yes?
When you're talking about the payment, I can't see that very well. Are they paying with a credit card?
The air charges, I believe, have a card that are going to be built in. So the airfare charges will be paid for behind the scenes. They won't have to provide form of payment for that.
So this way they don't get their airlines.
No, they do. They get the miles. Well, they get the miles on their frequent flyer number, but not like point rewards on their credit card or anything like that.
So will the charge be on the credit card or on the university?
University for airfare.
Yeah, for those that can't hear the questions, they're asking about the actual payment of the airfare. We're behind the scenes taking care of that. That's what this advanced booking is, so you don't have to. Outside the system, if you don't use CTP and your traveler is still paying for their airfare on their own, you'll be required to turn in a travel voucher just like you were before. So this is saving you time and effort and money because of the discounts behind here if you use CTP. But you guys don't have to worry about the card. We've got it taken care of behind it.
But for this, you have to pay $750, right?
Booking online, there's a fee of $750 that's assessed when booking online.
But just booking on the Southwest website, we don't have to pay that. But it's loading in the same rate.
Okay.
Is that what you
If
said?
you booked on Southwest Airlines, you're missing a discount. And I realize we've signed an agreement with Southwest behind here that's a greater discount than you would get from their regular website.
Okay, I thought you said it was loading in the same thing that you.
Well,
it's pulling in
is the program.
It's pulling in the same content. So all of their airfares and things like that, those want-to-get-away fares, those are generally only available through swabiz.com. This takes that into account, but it also, like she said, it has the corporate discount that's being applied on top of that. And so those fares are showing up available with the discount added on top of that. Let's see. Passport information, it does house passport information. Ultimately, it does even support dual citizenship, so if there's instances where someone has two passports, that can be populated in here and expanded. Currently, it's just the one, so if it needs to be expanded, it can. And then assistance and travel arrangers, this is where, speaking earlier about assigning someone to go in and look at your profile on your behalf or make travel arrangements for you on your behalf, this is where you would add those individuals. And it pulls from the user base in the system, so it's just a matter of starting to type the assistant's name. Let's see. And it's essentially the user base. I was looking for a specific somebody, but I don't see them in there. So once you do that, you can check this box, and by checking this first box, can book travel for me, what you're doing is you're giving them permission to ultimately access your profile and book travel arrangements for you. The difference between this first box and having both of these boxes checked is that if they can book travel for me, then that person's ultimately just given that permission. They're not going to be included in every communication that's made. They're only going to be included in travel arrangements that they have gone in and arranged for that traveler. If the traveler goes in and makes a travel arrangement and the arranger did not make that arrangement, then the arranger would not get any email communications for that, only the traveler. So if they needed to receive all communications, then the arranger is going to want to make sure that, one, that their profile is complete, and by complete it requires a work phone number and an email address. The email address should be populated automatically into everything, so it's just going to be that work phone number that needs to be added if it's not provided already. Once it's provided, then you can check both of these boxes, click Save, and then it'll state in parentheses, let me check and see if, yeah, Liz did hers. So you can see that it'll say primary travel arranger or primary travel assistant. So if there's an instance where you have multiple people that need to get all communications, because the primary will get every communication, whether the traveler did it, another traveler arranger did it, they would get every email as if they are the traveler themselves. And sometimes there needs to be multiple arrangers that have that same communication. The system does only allow you to default one as a primary. So in this instance, I delegated Liz to be my primary, and if I needed Christy to be a primary as well, then I would have to go and populate her email at the top and add it as an additional email. Then she would get every communication and have the same permissions as my other primary. Credit card information. This is where you would add the card information. It's restricted just to car rentals. So, and in most cases with car reservations, unless you're doing a specialty vehicle like a minivan or something like that where it requires a deposit, you're actually not even required to provide credit card information in most cases. But it does allow you to add personal cards in here. It doesn't have to be designated for car charges, but it will retain that information. So if there is a form of payment and you have that option in there, it'll give you a drop down. You can choose ultimately if you want to apply that type card or not. That's the bottom of the form as far as the long profile page. There is notation on here that if the name is not correct as it appears here, that as it shows on your government issue ID, that you need to notify HR so they can get that adjusted in the HR feed, because ultimately that's where this name information is coming from. So if there's discrepancies between the traveler's government name on their ID and what is appearing here, then you need to notify HR to get that updated.
Jason,
Yes.
remind them about the name also matching on the frequent traveler program.
Yes, frequent traveler programs. Sometimes there will be issues or disconnects with the frequent traveler program numbers if their names also don't match what is on the government issue ID. So if they're Steven, but they go and they set up their frequent flyer number with Steve and they put that in there, that can actually cause the profile or everything below that frequent flyer information to kind of error out because that name doesn't match. And the system can validate some of those names, like for instance with American Airlines. If the name on your AA frequent flyer number doesn't match the name that's provided on your travel reservation, it will error out and it won't capture your frequent flyer number information. So it's just important that those programs are set up with the name on the ID as well.
Does that matter, like middle initials or middle names?
Middle initials aren't as highly scrutinized as the first and last names. Best practice, though, is just to make them match. Utilizing, if there's a middle initial on your ID, then utilize the middle initial. If there's the full middle name, then to use the full middle name. That's going to be the safest bet, just to avoid there being any conflict or errors down the road. Let's see. I'm going to go back to this previous profile page. There's a couple options on this page that that are unique and don't take you back to that previous profile page. First of which is the e-receipt activation. It's a 2-second process. You can only do it once. So since it's already been opted in on here, I can't ultimately show it to you. But there's a hyperlink that says opt-in. You click the opt-in button. A legal disclaimer box pops up. It says I agree or I disagree. You click I agree and it's done. You're enrolled. The catch is it has to be done by the profiled user themselves. Someone can't be designated as an arranger and go in and do this on behalf of somebody else. Because what it does is it's a link between the credit card information that they're providing in their profile and the vendors that they're going to be utilized for travel. Most all of the car companies that are in the system participate with e-receipts, and then there's a good number of the hotels as well. The way it works is you rent the rental car, you take the rental car back, you drop off your keys, and you leave. You don't pick up your receipt or anything like that. As long as you've opted into e-receipts in the system, the tool will automatically import your PDF receipt into Concur and attach it to your air invoice. So essentially, if you used air, car, and hotel and had e-receipts on all of those, you can get in one invoice and have all 3 of your receipts in one page versus having 3 separate receipts for each service. But it's really, really quick, 2-second process. But like I said, the drawback is it has to be done by the profiled user. It can't be done by an admin on somebody's behalf. Another link on here, it would be the system settings. And this is where you can control your email notifications. Concur at times can be a little heavy on the amount of emails that it sends out. So if you're finding yourself receiving emails that you don't find to be informative or are not helpful for what you're doing, this is where you can control what emails you receive and don't receive. Also, here's where you can make adjustments for the time format, whether you like the 12-hour or 24-hour clock, and then depending on how you want your calendar view to display. Concur also has a mobile app for most all of the smart devices. It's free in the Apple, Android, and BlackBerry markets. Basically, you use your same username and password. They used to require that you set up a mobile PIN. That's not a requirement anymore. You can set up one if you'd like, but you're not obligated to do so. Essentially, once you've logged into the app on your device, unless you log out or delete the app, you'll never have to log back into it again. From a travels perspective, once you've gone in and you've set up your profile, got all your information in place on your profile, you can go into the app and book your air, car, and hotel and provide everything that you need to provide to make a trip right on your phone without having to log into the website or pick up the phone and call anybody. The only catch is the profile has to be completed on the desktop version. There's not a profile access portion through the web or the mobile app itself.
On the profile where it says financial debt ID, can that be changed each time if you have like a professor who travels on 4 different grants?
I believe right now it is editable. I don't know if that's something that they want hard-coded or if it's something they want to give them flexibility to change.
Yeah, we actually are working on that. That's been part of our confusion with this travel program and the feed that we thought was coming down. So for now, it's editable, which means you can change it. If the feed really works the way we want it to, you're going to have one default ID. And then if you want it to change, you're going to have to call our travel team. Isn't that kind of what we've said? But we don't, that's why we're having a pilot program, and we're going to see how this works and what works best for you guys as our customers.
We're grant funded, and so we use PI money for some travel, we use grants for other travel. So getting that number, it's going to change depending on where we go, what we do, who's, traveling. That's not going to be super helpful for us if it's hard-coded in there.
And we realize that, but like I said, get over here where people can see me.
And let me just add on, I spend about $30,000 a year in travel.
Yeah. The question is if you use a lot of Proj IDs, then being hard-coded really isn't helpful to you guys as our customer. And we realize that. Know that this tool, which is again called Concur, Concur is a huge product. It has what's called approval to travel. It has a module that's called booking. It has a module that's called something else, and the one that will prepare your travel voucher and tie it up with a bow and hand it to you. Probably even serve you a Coke if that's what you wanted. But we don't own it. We haven't purchased it. Trying everything I can to get it in our hot little hands. That will allow us to do all these things that each one of you wish. We might be able to fulfill a wish for everyone. But because we don't have it, we're limited on this, and we're going to put together the best package that we possibly can, hopefully hitting at least, my goal is to get at least 75% of you happy. What I really want is 100%, but not going to get there right away. So it may be that we have to hard code only one number and then you have to pick up the phone. But our travel team, who will have administrator rights, should be able to pop you in really quick. That's my dream. So if we all get a dream, I've given you mine.
Can you split
Pardon
between,
me?
Can you split between funds? Like if you need the flight to be split between two different funds? Because we have a lot that get pest funds from the VPR's office, and so there's a lot of splitting each charge across 2 or 3, sometimes 4 different funds. Can we do that, or is that in the future with my hopes where I get the Coke?
Right, split. Hey, you were listening, thank you. Yes, my real dream, that is your dream, and I want your dream to come true, but for now it's going to be one. You
Okay,
choose,
okay.
and then we'll have to, behind the scenes, do that splitting through some accounting function, okay?
Okay.
But, keep your fingers crossed that I can make your dream come true later.
And also, I right now arrange travel for all my faculty. So can I be the primary on more than one traveler?
Yes. Yeah, you can be the primary on as many travelers as you need to be. There can only just be one primary delegated per traveler. But you can be an arranger for every single person ultimately if the need arose. All right, so that's pretty much the profile detail information. Is there any questions or anything on profiles that I could answer? All right. Am I going to do any test booking or just a demo booking? Sorry, was there a question? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I do like team traveling with athletics. Would we be using this as a team, or would this just be for our coaches recruiting?
This is geared towards one traveler type deal. That would probably go through full service or through the groups department, depending on the number of travelers.
8 to 35.
That would probably be best through a group agent thing.
And I will say, our athletic department at the campus already uses them, and they have an assigned agent for their team travel. So that's who we will be using.
So we'll just use this like for our coaching, recruiting trip.
Any one person.
And official visit.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and do a test booking, and I'm going to go from Dallas to Houston only because I know that I'm going to showcase some of the state government fairs and how those can be displayed. And I know that those are cheaper in that market to where they'll show over the regular, fully refundable type fares. The system works one of two ways. You can either type in the airport code if you know the airport codes, or you can start to type the name of the city, and it'll give you a list to choose from based on what you're needing.
Can you choose multiple airports?
Some
Like Dallas has 2.
Right. Some of them they have.
At the same time.
Trying to see if it's on. It does support area airports, and I need to turn that on. And it will do both airport options at the same time. It does it for Houston, Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco area.
What if there's not an airport in the city per se, but there's like 5 within 30 minutes of the city?
Right. Like Baltimore?
Well, I'm thinking of Littleton, Maine. There's not an airport there. The closest one is like half an hour away.
Right. Well, this is going to be looking for airports with, cities with airports.
Okay.
There is the Find an Airport, so you can click on here, and then start to type the city information, and then it'll give you the closest airports to that area. If it's one of those instances where it's like the Boston, or not Boston, the Washington, Chicago, Dallas, Houston type thing where there's a close knit of airports and it's one of those city groups, then it'll automatically give you that area option. If not, it's going to make you choose a specific airport.
Okay.
The system lets you also choose if you need to arrive by a particular time or leave by a particular time. So if you're trying to, schedule backwards as far as they need to be someplace by 11, and they need to get there by 9 o'clock, then you can do the arrive by, and then the system will search your flights from that aspect as also to try to get you where you need to be, when you need to be there. So I've put in the flight information, and ultimately you'll see that there's a car and a hotel tab up here. I can do the air, car, and hotel search all at one time from this first tab. It's just a matter of checking the box for a pickup and drop off of the car at the airport, and then checking the box for find a hotel. For find a hotel, it gives you a couple options as far as what you can put in to search by. You can put in the airport. You can put in company addresses if company locations have been provided or they're applicable to that city. An actual address. So if you're going to see a client, you've got their address but not sure what properties are nearby. You can plug in their address and then it'll search nearby. Or just a reference point. You just a landmark, a zip code. You don't have the complete address. You can search by that as well. For this example, I'm just going to use the airport. For government airfares, if you're going to be looking specifically for government airfares, you're going to want to check this refundable only airfares box. Then you're going to be ensured that the airfares that come up are either state government fares or fully refundable fares to where they have the same penalties as those. By default, the system's going to show you the cheaper of those options. So if the fully refundable fare is cheaper than the state fare, then you're going to see the fully refundable fare over the state fare. That's why I use this Dallas to Houston market for the example, because a lot of the other markets, the state fares are higher than what some of the cheaper refundable fares are. But by checking this box, ultimately it's going to give you the option for all those refundable fare types. Plug it in, hit search. If ultimately you've gone into the tool and you never went to the profile, never completed your information, and just started plugging in your flight information and clicked search, the system's going to let you do that. Before you get to this particular screen, though, it's going to redirect you back to your profile had you not completed it. It'll make you complete the required information. As soon as you hit save, it'll take you back, and then it'll drop you on this screen, so you don't have to start all over again. So either you go to the profile voluntarily and complete it, or the system's going to direct you there if you try to look without doing so. Let me see. And the system lets you shop by one of two methods. You can either shop by fares. So if it's just something where you're wanting to just see what the options are, you can do that. Another really neat function about this is you can print and email this information at any point to anybody. Email, and it's going to show you, here's your flight details, and then the cost for that. So if you wanted to give some options to somebody, have them choose an option and get back to you, you can do so without actually even booking anything in the system. You can book it and hold it at the end of Ultimate if you'd like to, but if you just kind of want to shop, get some ideas on what times they're wanting or things like that, kind of gauge things, you can share this. And this works with both the air, car, and hotel, or all air, car, and hotel. So the shop by fare is not taking into account any time specifications that you put. It's just based solely on cost. If you do the shop by schedule, then it's going to let you choose your outbound flight option, and it floats up to the top like this one did. Once you select that one, then it switches to the return, and then you pick your return flight, and it'll float to the top. Price these options. Now when I show these details, I wanted to show you the GSA. So this is how the government airfares are going to reflect in the system. If it was a refundable fare, this GSA information would be gone, and it would just say this is a refundable ticket as a regular published fare. The non-refundable tickets would state this is a non-refundable ticket. By doing so, if they had a frequent flyer number for these carriers, it would automatically populate down here, so it's not something that you have to associate. It automatically associates itself when it's applicable. And you can also see the seat maps on here also. Prior to going in and actually reserving these flights, some people are very, very particular about their seats. If there's not a window seat, I'm not taking the flight. So you can ultimately click here and see the seat maps before you get in there. All of these seats that are in green are available. The ones with yellow may require status to obtain. So if they have status, more than welcome to try and select a seat. Even if they don't have status, you're more than welcome to try. The system will tell you initially, and I'll show you, that for one, I don't have a frequent flyer program number in there, so it acknowledges that, and it may not honor it because it's a preferential seat. So I click OK. It's still going to let me put my guy there. I hit select seat, and it'll either come back and it'll confirm the seat, which it looked like it did. Even though it said that it was preferential, it may not give it to me, or it'll come back and it'll say, I'm sorry, we're unable to confirm that seat. So it'll let you know right away whether it can or can't do so. So now when I close it, you'll see that this is green now, and so I've got my seat selection on here. So when I actually go through the process that's the seat that it should capture for me. And it'll give you a review for it also. Had we not gone and looked at the seat map, then it's going to go based solely on that preferential travel preference that we put in there as far as aisle or window, and it's going to automatically try to capture those where it can. So if it's more of a just get through it, I'll pick it at the end based on see what after it gets, you can do that as well. So you don't have to get the seat map selection at this time. It's just for those that are a little bit more particular about their seats or wanting to kind of gauge what seats are available at that time. Once you get the flights and everything that you want, you just click reserve. Now with Concur, what it actually does is it doesn't go and accumulate everything that you want and then at the end of it try to secure that. It's actually selling the inventory for this cost at this time. So right now it's moved over the profile into the travel system. It's selling those flights. It's securing that inventory to get that fare. So the fares that you see at the beginning of this booking process should be the fare that you see at the end of the booking process. It shouldn't change. So it's not going to be a, well, now it's $200 higher now that you're fixing to buy it kind of deal. The fares aren't guaranteed until they are ticketed, so there is some, subject to change in fares. But from my experience with this, it's not been that drastic to where it's, a completely different fare at the end of the process. Working cars, you're going to see this notation not to take additional insurances. The insurance is inclusive of the rates. Preferred vendors are all listed here, as well as the car types that are available. Here's a example of the e-receipt enabled and how that option appears.
Mm-hmm. So you can Jason, let me make a point here. Enterprise is our preferred vendor on rental cars. They're preferred for the reason that we will pay the bill directly. Our travel team will pay it directly. If you're on this site, you reserve the rental car, you don't have to worry about it in a voucher in the future. If you choose any other one, it becomes your responsibility to report on a voucher, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to draw your attention to that. Enterprise is the one. Yes.
But there is state insurance included with all of those? Because
yes.
Before we've only used Avis and Enterprise.
Yeah, they're all included in there.
Yes.
On the booking, can you make a reservation and have a flight held like for 24 hours or whatever?
Yeah, you could with the airlines or any reservation on here for the most part, you can hold for 24 hours or up to 24 hours, should I say. That 24-hour hold period is based on the last date of purchase of the airfares. Some airfares require that they be purchased by that day, depending like 14-day advance purchases. If it's the 14th day and you wait till the following day, that fare is not going to be available. The system's smart enough to know that, and it'll let you know in the event when those hold time frames are going to be shortened. And it'll tell you that it needs to be done by end of business that day, and it'll put the actual date and time frame on there, and I'll point that out when we get to the ability to the point where you can actually place a reservation on hold. I'm on here with...
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But these prices that's loading in, are these the state prices? Because I can't, it's really small.
I'm sorry. I can make them a little
For the
bit.
rental cars, like what?
They're the contracts associated. Every price you see has either the state rate or some contracted rate that we have available.
So it's a mix of state rates or just a discounted rate. Right. Well, it's showing, it's applying wherever they apply. Like, I don't know exactly how it's broken down to where which ones have state rates and which ones have just a discount applied. But it's applying those discounts, whether it be state or just a corporate discount on top of that. So these rates are reflected of those amounts. As far as I've had some pretty good questions as far as people wanting to know like capacity of vehicles, how many travelers, how many bags type things. By clicking on the magnifying glass, it'll let you know for that type vehicle with that company, what the passengers, how many passengers, how many bags you can fit inside those vehicles. Just to kind of give you an idea, I thought that was pretty neat when I found that. But again, on here is just a matter of finding the vehicle that you're wanting, the rate that you want, and clicking reserve. Just to point out, the system does keep an estimated travel cost of the entire trip, including air, car, and hotel. So it gives the approximate totals inclusive of tax and things like that to give you a closer estimate as to what the trip cost is going to be. The system does advise of per diem. So it's taking into account the county that you're actually flying into. So if it's an instance where you're flying into one county but they're actually staying in a hotel someplace else, then you just want to adjust that here so that the per diem information is advised correctly. By default, like I said, it's capturing where at the airport you're flying into. Once you click next, now it's going to go and pull back our actual hotel availability. So there's our point of interest with these other hotel options. Now these down up here on the map correspond with these locations lower down on the screen. You can click on these up here to see which is which without having to scroll back and forth, so you can kind of get an idea of what property is where without scrolling up and down on the screen until you get dizzy. It also has a lot of functionality over here. So here's the notation for the per diem again. If you know the neighborhood that you're going to be staying in, you can click on it and it'll live filter it out and pull out everything else. If you wanted to look at particular chains, like you could do super chains and do all of the Marriotts, then all of the Marriotts would show. E-receipts, if you only wanted to look at e-receipt enabled properties, you can do so with hotel. So there's a whole bunch of filters ultimately that you can turn on and off with the hotels to kind of narrow it down towards, travel needs if they need a business center or a fitness center. And the system automatically goes and will pull those that have that information out and eliminate the others. So you can narrow it down to, 1 or 2 properties if that's what's needed. The system in here, you'll see that that these rates are all in yellow. The reason being is that it's over per diem. The system isn't going to prevent you from taking one of those rates, but it is going to require you to give some additional information as to why you're booking over per diem. Every time.
I know that Jason keeps saying per diem, and I said per diem was a nasty word in the beginning. So you guys just need to know, this is just advising you that the government service administration GSA rates, that's there. You are, again, you don't have to live by those rates. They're there for your information. We've talked about taking them off, but I think they're just going to stay on there. So that information only. Okay?
And then with hotels on here, anytime you reserve a hotel, it's going to make you verify the cancellation policy of that property prior to securing it. So it lets you know the rate, the total rate with the cost, and then the cancellation policy details are usually the last 2 or 3 lines of this box here. So it's canceled by 6 p.m. day of arrival, which is pretty lenient nowadays. A lot of the hotels are getting a lot more strict with their cancellation policies. They require 24, 48, even 72 hours notice to avoid a night stay plus tax penalty. Ultimately, in order to secure it, you do have to check the I agree and continue to move forward. It also makes you verify the information. If you go on the tool and cancel a reservation, you have to verify the cancellation policy yet again in the event you're within that time frame, that you are aware that you're within that time frame. Anytime you choose something with the yellow box, it's going to make you choose an exception reason. For example, these are the ones that are in here for hotel. If it's a conference or recommended hotel, safety or other. If it's other, it's just a matter of explaining down here. And then that information is captured on there. Also be aware that the rate amount that you've chosen is highlighted, as well as all of the options that would be considered under per diem and available. So if it was, there weren't any government rates less than per diem available, and that's your reasoning, but then all this other information is captured at kind of, just be aware that this other detailed information is being captured, and that's being sent on as well throughout the approval process.
Is there a way to only look at government or hotels that meet government rates? Because we have to stay by those.
You can ultimately, on that on that previous page, there's a slider bar for price. You can slide it down to the per diem rate, and then it's only going to show you the rates that are below that dollar amount. So you can narrow it down that way.
So like on Marriott or Hilton, you actually have to click, I want to look at government rates. Is it pulling in all of those, or is it just pulling in your negotiated rate that actually is?
It's pulling in all of the government rates. So the government rates that are, where they're available will display. You don't have to actually check that in the profile. It's actually turned on for the entire site. So the government one that's under travel preferences in their profile is really kind of not applicable because it's turned on across the board. But the rates will show where they are available. So if there aren't government rates showing, then they're likely not showing government rates in the actual travel system itself, because that's where it's pulling all this data. So if it's not there and we don't have it to relay, then they're not showing a rate available for us either.
I have a question. If I'm either sending a student to a conference or I'm attending a conference, we can do airfare with this, but we could actually do the hotel, let's say. Because if we're trying to get in the block that the conference has, how do we just do that completely separately on a voucher versus doing our airfare this way and the hotel the old way?
If it's a block, it's not going to show up on here because there's no way for us to know that, right?
There's a couple ways you can go about it. If it's a room block and you know the property, you can ultimately look in the system and see, sometimes there's lower rates that may be available. That might not be best practices with the conference and the room blocks because they're accounting on those room nights. Right. But there is an option if you know what the rate name is, what the rate amount is, and the dates, everything like that, if it's different from your flight dates. There's actually a comments to agent box at the end of this booking process. So you could either, go out and ultimately do that on your own if need be, or you can provide that information in the comments to agent box, and then our online desk can reach out to the property to secure it and then add it into the reservation and send it back out to you.
And that's in that $750, and that's not going to cost.
$750.
Okay. Because if it's going to cost us $20 to get an agent to do that, what's the point? So.
That would be inclusive of the $750.
And Jason, I just want to clarify, and you would go ahead and book a room at that property, or reserve a room at whatever rate, and then you add those comments to agent, and they would reach out and make sure that rate for the conference.
Right, we can get the rate transferred over. That way, at least they have something. Because what if we call and the room block's sold out? Then at least they've got a rate at the property. We can call and change the rate after the fact. So that might be the best practice in that case.
To go ahead and book it.
Secure what you can. Okay. And, just make a notation at the end on the comments to agent that this is for a conference. The conference name is this. The conference rate amount is this. And then they can reach out to the property and have that adjusted. And they can change it in the itinerary itself and resend that out with the update.
Okay, thank you. Most of the time, I'm finding that if you're going to book a hotel for a conference rate, you have to have a credit card at that time. It's not something you can just hold.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to call and get a traveler a room and they held that room with their own personal credit card, could I go back into this system and tell the system what I did?
I believe the behavior, the way it's set up now, and I just have to reconfirm, as far as the hotels, like the university card, I think, is used to guarantee the hotels. So in that instance, there's going to be a credit card applied behind the scenes. It wouldn't be the traveler's card. It'd be the university's card that's used for the guarantee. So they wouldn't have to actually provide anything, but actually payment for the conference.
Right. And they're going to be able to put their personal credit card information in here, right?
Correct.
Yeah, they can put personal credit card information in there.
So if she was booking the airfare, it would automatically go to our card, but would she have to get out and do a second time in order to book the hotel with their personal card off here? No.
No, I don't think so. I think they're just given the option to choose the card, I think, as far as the university card. If they had a personal card, then they could just choose the personal card. So if that were the case.
This may be one of those where we're going to do some trial and error, working with a department to figure out what's the best way. Because our ultimate goal is, again, for every advance booking for us to be able to pay for it and y'all not have to worry about it. Hotels are a little trickier because they don't just let you show up and say, oh yeah, that my company's paying for it. You know, they really want to see your credit card. So we don't have a way to do some of those. So I don't know. We'll just have to try some of these. I don't know on these conferences. I'm thinking I would still go outside this system and book my conference. Because you're going to do a voucher for that anyway. We're not paying for it through this process. Okay? Yes?
If we did the hotel through this, I've encountered it before, where we would book a hotel, have submit an ePro to pay for it. Our buyer would give them the credit card information. The guest would still be charged, and the buyer would not. Would this override that, or would the guests, or could the guests still be charged when they check in and have to present a credit card?
If you go through this system for your guests gonna get charged every time because there's no card behind here for a hotel. Nothing through here except for, again, we will pay for, if they require one advance night or whatever. I think we have this set up to where if it's you have to pay one dot in advance, that will put a card behind there. But that's all. So I would say with a guest, you're just running the risk that the guest's gonna have to pay unless you go through ePro.
Okay. I've had that happen even with.
I know, and we're dependent upon the hotel. So there's nothing we're doing wrong. I know that we have put those credit cards. I've watched the buyers when they called, and the reservation's set up all correct. And for whatever reason, when the guest gets there,
I will tell you what we've done is we've actually had all the documentation from the buyer given to the person who's traveling, and the hotel has taken all of that documentation and it said it's okay because it shows that it's been paid for.
Yeah.
So we get as much documentation as
The
possible.
hotels usually, if it's payment by a third party, which is what you're talking about from their perspective, they require written authorization from whoever is paying for this person's charges. So they want to see, yes, I'm Deb Reynolds, I'm paying for John Smith's hotel stay on these dates, and this is the method of payment. That's what the hotel requires.
Yeah, Celia and I have actually talked about that. In Denton, the state school uses that method, and it works for them. But we're not ready to go in that direction yet.
All right, so here's the, after you've gone through, selected all of your trip details and things, this is going to be the first overview on the reservation. There's a couple of things on here that are customizable, like the trip name. If someone frequents Dallas to Houston 3 or 4 times a month, a trip from Dallas to Houston might be a little bit tough to distinguish one trip from another. So it's just a matter, you can click on here and it's completely customizable. You can add a client's name, you can add dates, you can make it however you want to be able to distinguish your trips. And you have a description option to where if you wanted to put the client's name that they're going to see, or if it was a convention or function or whatnot, you can distinguish it that way also. Your trip record locator, at this point, if you needed to call and speak with the online desk in regards to this reservation, this is how they can access your trip. So you just provide them this code, and then we can see your travel arrangements in the system. Passengers, this is how the name will appear on the ticket. So if you're at this point, you haven't purchased anything yet, you haven't done anything that's not reversible, you find out it's the wrong person if you're an admin booking on behalf of somebody else and you've got 20 people. It's just a drop-down list of names. Inadvertently click the wrong name and you don't notice it till this point. Ultimately, at this point we could cancel and go back and have to start on that trip under the correct name as needed. You have the options to go and change any of this as needed, cancel portions of it if you want to cancel portions of it. Looks like I didn't like my seating assignment. So this is how it'll tell you, no seating assignment. So by default, if it couldn't get your initial request, this is how it's going to notify you. And then you can pull up the seat and it shows you the seat map again and you can make the selection. It's going to let me take one of these center seats without the green background on it. My best advice in regards to seats are, if you can't get your preference, grab something, even if it's less desirable, a center seat or anything along those lines. Having a seating assignment is much, much better than not having a seating assignment. The first people to get bumped from the aircraft are those that don't have seating assignments. So even if it's a center and that's all that's left, by all means get the center seat. At the comments to agents section, you can put a notation in there. Please try and get an aisle seat. Please try and get a window seat. Try to get me more forward to the front of the aircraft. With some of the airlines, we can go in and unblock seats. Not all of them, but some of them we can. So where we can accommodate those requests, we definitely try, so that we can get you better seating than what may be available. But like I said, best practice to get a seating assignment, even if it's less desirable, because you don't want to get stuck without a seating assignment on an oversold flight.
So that car rental price to me looked higher than our state rate.
It's $48.53 is the daily rate.
Yeah, that's not what our state contracted rate is, and so I'm just curious if because our rate for a full size is $36.50, I think. So that rate is more.
Celia?
I'll have to check. I mean, that's what's loaded in there is our discounted rates, correct?
I'll have to double check just to be sure, but
Yeah,
it should be.
But that was for a compact, right? And our compact rate, I think, is $32.50. And so I'm just curious that because it would be more expensive this way plus the $750. And then if I go to enterprise, it's not sourced as a government rate. It pays and won't get underage. I'll have to pay the $10 fee if it's not directly.
Right. I just need to reconfirm that the discount information is being applied on the backside. But when once to verify that it is, if that's the case, then the rate, it might be a typo on my part. And then it should capture and reflect the appropriate rates as long as the discount's being applied accordingly. But I need to double check that on the backside and reconfirm that that is being applied. The hotels, a good example that I use with the hotels is they secured this one room or this one property for the 3 days, but then, say hypothetically realize that they're not getting in until late in the evening on this one particular day, and they're actually not staying near the airport, they're staying elsewhere. You could change the dates for this property to the dates that they would actually be at this particular property, and then add a hotel for that additional one-off night as needed. So you could have multiple hotel properties in one reservation without having to go back and do a separate hotel for each of those additional nights as needed. But once you verify everything on here is accurate, just clicking next. And then here's the option of where you can place a reservation on hold if needed. So it lets you know that you may hold the reservation until, and it gives the date and time frame of when it would need to be submitted for purchase by in order to be processed. Here's the comments to agent box. As far as the special instructions for seats or hotel rates or anything along those lines. And anything that you type in here automatically makes the reservation fall on another queue for someone to look at. So even if you put in here NA for non-applicable, that's going to make that record fall on a queue for somebody to look at. It's not required to put anything in there, so if you don't have anything, you can just leave it blank. You don't have to put anything in there. The information that you do have to provide asks what type of travel you're doing, whether it's local, state, or grant. Depending on which one you choose, it's going to require you to provide additional information. Local and state is going to require you to provide DEP ID, and if you have grant travel, then it's going to require you to provide your Proj ID, and then ask from which component do you need your grant approval. So then the system will go and set it up to where we can get the grant approval system underway. The DEP ID approval is all automated, so it would go to the DEP ID person that's on file, but once they approve it, the system will come back and issue the ticket. It's a little bit different process with grant travel, because you have to go outside of those means to get the approval. But it is an email and respond type approval system for that as well. Once you provide the, I'll just do a local one for now. Well, once you provide the required information, it'll allow you to either place it on hold or click next. You can hold the reservation without providing this detail, so if you don't know this information as of yet, you can hold it, come back to the reservation, add that information, and submit it for purchase as long as it's prior to the deadline. Once this deadline comes, the reservation does get canceled if it hasn't been submitted for purchase or taken off of hold. There is a notation here for unused tickets, and there's a little bit of instruction at the top. And this is outside of Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines you'll see within the booking process as it applies. With any other carriers, American, Delta, United, those type carriers, there'll be a notation that'll show up to you as unused tickets, and it'll show up where they apply. It'll be in that matrix where it shows the airlines and the 1 stops and the 2 stops. It'll add another column to the bottom of that says unused tickets. And if, say, for instance, you have one on American is on that matrix, then it'll put the however many credits you have on that carrier there. The system is smart enough to know that if you have a Delta credit and Delta's not in the market, it's not going to advise you that you have credits. It's only going to advise you when they apply. So based on that information, it's only informative to you. The system can't take those ticket credits and apply them through the system. It does require some manual intervention on the backside to make sure that those happen. But it's just informative to you. Say you have the American credit, you booked American flights, you get at the end and you say, I did have an unused ticket credit on there and I do want to use that. So you would say, yes, unused ticket applies. I want to make you aware that this yes, unused ticket applies process stops the automation system from actually ticketing that reservation. The approval still goes out. It still requires to get that approval, but when the approval comes back, it's going to state that you have an unused ticket, and the system's not going to automatically issue that ticket until an agent pulls it up, verifies that, for one, there is a credit, is it applicable to the itinerary that was selected, is it cost effective, is the ticket value less than the change fee. If that's the case, then there's no sense in paying extra money to use a credit that doesn't have that much value. So all that stuff is done on the backside. Once all that stuff is validated and the credit's valid and it's been approved, then we'll process the ticket using that credit. If it's not, then they'll reach out to you, let you know what the case is. The credit really doesn't have any value on it, or it doesn't apply to this itinerary, or it'd be more cost effective used in this type of manner. Do you want to use it at a later time? They'll consult with you on how you want to go based on what the situation is. But all of the other options that you choose do not stop the automated process. Only this one yes unused ticket applies, stops that automated process. Once you provide these details and click next, now this is your final review. You'll see everything that's been provided and populated up here at the top. And then it doesn't give you the option to change any of this information anymore. It's just all for review. Once you verify everything, click confirm booking. Now the reservation has been sent off to start the approval process. It'll let you know when it needs to be approved by. So it lets you know, that DEP ID holder has until this time frame to approve the trip. If they don't approve it by that time frame, then it will be automatically canceled. Trying to see where it goes. When you get actually out of here, once you've completed it, you have the option to either print it or email it to somebody if you'd like. If you return back to the travel center, you'll see that it shows up over here, and it lets you know the status of that reservation. It's a pending approval. I listed myself as my own approver, so I can show you both sides of it. Plus, I make sure that these don't actually get ticketed against a fictitious card. So it lets you know this is when it needs to be approved by, and you'll see this 9:55 time frame is different than I believe it said 11:55 before. The approval time frame, it's saving itself that 2 hours. Ultimately, the fare is good until 11:55, but the system needs time to process that ticket once it's been approved, so it allots itself that additional 2 hours. So the deadline is ultimately 9:55 for the approval. Yes?
Once you do this, I know with Delta, I've dealt with this before. Could the airfare still go up if you had booked through Delta or something like that between the time you hit submit and the time they actually purchase it?
It's possible for fares to increase.
Okay, what happens if you get approval from Grants for $240 for airfare, and when they go in and pay it, it's jumped up to $340?
What we typically do is, and we try to fight the battle before you're even notified that the fare's gone up, because the approval will come through and the request is going to go out for the original quoted amount. When the approval comes back, if it's different than that, it'll error out on our side that the fare, the stored fare is not the same as what it was submitted for. What we'll do is we'll reach out to the carrier in most cases and see if we can get them to honor the original fare.
Okay.
So if they'll honor the original fare, and then we'll just go and issue the ticket, and you'll never know any different. If the fare does increase, can't get them to honor the fare, then we'll come back to you and let you know. And the fare increased, and fares aren't guaranteed until they're ticketed, so it's it's beyond our control. But we'll try to make that additional step for you prior to even reaching out to you, letting you know that it has increased. At that point, then it's a matter of this is what the current fares are, and then it'll turn it into you've already got that approval from this person for this dollar amount. We reach out to them, look, it's increased to this. Do you approve this kind of thing? Because we can't send the approval back through the automated system. It would have to be an email or a verbal communication and document it at that point.
Okay. Is it possible to get, right now, if I have to book airfare, I always increase it by $200 on the request form that I send over, just in case it goes up. That way, I don't have to frantically call somebody while I'm sitting over in the travel trying to book it. Can we do that with this? That way it's taken care of, don't have to worry about it.
This is going to take and send approval for the dollar amounts that were quoted.
Okay.
So, I mean, when they go through and they actually make the approval, they do have an option. Like here, I'll show you on this one. Because I have the trip here showing as a pending trip for approval. So if I click in here and I approve this trip, click approve, it gives me the comments here. So you can say, I give a $200 whatnot, a cushion. Okay. So then as long as the airfare stays within $200 of this dollar amount, I'm okay with it, kind of deal.
Okay. And if that's entered in there, when you go to book it, if it has gone up, your ticket agents will see that. They'll still try to get the original ticket price, or will they just automatically?
They're still going to ultimately try to get the original ticket price. I mean, that's best practice is for us to try to get what you were originally quoted. And usually with the carriers, we're fairly successful at getting them to honor that original fare as long as it's within that, close to that original 24-hour time frame. Usually they're pretty good about honoring it. Not all cases, it depends on the carrier. But, that's kind of how we work that situation currently.
At what point is the Office of Research involved? Like right now, we as the department get their approval. By the time it gets to VFC, the approvals are all in place.
He hasn't shown you anything with Proj ID at this point.
Okay.
It's outside. It follows a manual approval system. Okay. So where if I had selected the grant travel previously, I'd put the Proj ID and then I would state, is it UNT campus or is it HSC campus for the grant approval? And then that falls on a queue for our agents on the online desk to send out those approvals into those needed boxes. And then they would wait for that response to come back with the approval before they would issue the ticket.
Question, and I know you guys have said this is preferred method, preferred travel method. Let's just say, for example, we go on and see this, then I go out and I go to Southwest and see something else. Southwest, I can hold for 24 hours. This one, you're telling me that it's holding from the time I say it's there. It can still go up, the airfare can.
Well, the inventory is secured. So the inventory for that fare is secured. It's the actual airfare itself that's not guaranteed. And that would be the same instance with the airline. If you reserve it, you're only reserving the inventory. You're not reserving the dollar amount.
What about baggage fees? This isn't calculating that, is it?
No. Baggage fees usually have to be paid at the airport.
Right. Again, we're not, our best case here is we believe we have discounted fares. If you find that you can find a better fare than what we show you, then I want you to call our travel team, because our travel team's going to be behind the scenes too. Like Susan already looked up that Enterprise, and you were right. The Enterprise that was shown here, but we haven't QA'd behind Jason, so he did a bad job. Shame on you, Jason. You're not supposed to ridicule in public, but hey, we're paying him. But honestly, our team will be looking behind to make sure that the contract rates that we told him to load in are loaded. Mm-hmm. That's our QA part. That's what we have to do. We have to keep him honest. So we believe we negotiated with Enterprise a better than that 30. It's now $34.50.
Avis rate said 93 on there, and Avis was 32.50. So that's a big difference.
Right.
Well, that's just because he wanted you to pay the high price. We haven't had a lot of time between meeting. We've not actually sat down and met with them on all of this stuff. So he's given you, maybe what the normal people will. We're state employees, we get better pricing. So, but we'll be QAing behind that. But please draw to our attention anytime you get something better than what we have. Because we also have a strategic sourcing team that is trying to develop the very best contracts for everything we're doing. So we need your help too. But we're not going to make you use this, but we believe, we don't have any reason to disbelieve yet, that this is where you're going to get your greater discounts.
Maybe it just concerns me that I'll need to go on here and check prices, and then I'll need to go on the first party website and check prices.
But you don't have to. That's, if you
Once I get
choose
these
to do
right,
that.
it should reflect the correct information, so it wouldn't be a matter of having to validate that the
Right.
rates are what they're supposed to be. Once they're in there, they should be static and be in there and apply, pull what's showing to be applicable for that discount.
This is just a test demo. We didn't QA behind it to make sure that the contracts that we've signed for those discounts are what's showing here. In the future, though, Celia and her team, they'll stay on top of it. So if we know we entered a new contract, we call Jason and them up. They behind the scenes are showing that correct contract. In this case, it's not, but in the future it will. And if we QA wrong, you shouldn't have to shop more than one place. This is where we want you to be able to shop, and you'll be able to trust what's there.
Just to touch on like one-off travel, like prospective guest type travelers, and also for those that are going to be arranging travel. You'll see this box over here, administering travel for, and you'll see that there's a list of whoever's designated you as their arranger. You can go in here, so like for instance Liz, if I click on her name, now my upcoming trip things go blank because it's her. If I go to the profile tab over here and go into it, it would actually be her travel profile. So I can address, her preferences and things like that. And it lets you go and change it. So that would be where this picture might come in handy. A lot of people are a little intimidated about putting their picture on there, but if you're arranging for 15 to 20 people, and you're booking their flights and stuff, that picture information shows up for them. So if it shows up right away, you're like, that's not who I thought I was booking for. It can halt you and stop you in your tracks and make that correction before you get all the way to the end and actually see the passenger name detail stuff. Also would be for like the guest traveler. And guest traveler is not a permission that has been delegated to all. That is something that if, I believe you're going to do it for like a 24-hour time frame or something like that. Basically, you'd need to notify the travel team that you need to be able to book for a guest, and then they would grant you the permission, give you a time frame and do it by, and then take that permission back from you. So it's not something that's going to be delegated out to everybody, but you have a travel team if you need to book those types of travelers. Another thing on here would be the trip library. If you ever need to go and refer back to reservations, past reservations, Concur will actually house trips in the trip library for up to 13 months. So you actually have access to your travel reservations and itinerary invoice details in here in this system much, much longer than we do in the actual booking travel system, the GDS system. You can actually get your details in here going much further back than we can. But it'll house all that information in here, show you the view itinerary change, if you wanted to share that trip with somebody else so they can duplicate it, you can do that. You can create templates from these reservations. So if it's, you have the same person going on the same flights, using the same car, staying at the same hotel every month, you can create a template for that. And then all you have to do is plug in the dates and plug in whether it's grant, state, or local travel. Provide your PROD, your DEP ID, and then it'll automatically you can do the entire booking in under 2 minutes and have all your information secured. It still captures the policy stuff as far as the airfare costs and things like that, but it just goes straight to those flights and pull those flights back, so you don't have to go shopping for any of that information. It'll just automatically plug that in just based on the dates that you put in. there any questions or
Are you gonna show them the email approval?
Email approval. I don't have that linked into it yet. Well, the actual email approval, that's going to be on our side. As far as the filling it out and submitting for the approval.
Right, but you went, I think, on the approval screen where you just hit approve or reject, but they have to type in the approve or whatever if they were on their email.
Right. I have notation of that. I put the notes on here. Trying to make it not too small. As far as approving via email, for those that are going to be approving travel, there's two methods that you can approve travel. One is to log into Concur and then go to your trips awaiting approval tab, clicking the trip and clicking approve or reject like I showed you earlier. The other method is via the email itself. You can reply to the email, the approval email, and approve a trip that way as well. It's very specific on how you do so via the email. In the body of the email, and no other word but the word approve. Not approves with an S, not approved with a D, not thank you, I approve, just the word approve. It's an automated system. Nobody's actually opening that email. The system's capturing that and processing it. So if you add the D, add the S, add the cordial remarks, the system, it'll reject it. It won't capture it as an approval. It won't notify you that it's still pending approval. The traveler will just see that their trip still needs approval. So the automated system doesn't capture it. The other method that you can do in the email as well is they have brackets, and you can put an A or an R in those brackets that are provided to approve or reject that as well. You'll see that if there's a space between the bracket and the letter, it won't read that either. So with the emails, it's a little bit more particular as far as how you have to go about approving those. Ultimately, if you question on whether your approval went in or not, the safest bet is to actually just log into Concur, check your trips awaiting approval tab. If there's nothing there, then your approval went through. If your trip's still sitting there that you thought you approved, then it likely didn't capture your approval, and you can just click on the approval right there and send it right through.
And so again, our travel team will be behind the scenes always reviewing to ensure that your trips are getting approved as necessary, or if we're reaching that deadline. Is there anyone in here that's going to be approving travel rather than actually booking it?
I do both.
Okay, so you guys understood the part about email, and if you type approved, it messes it up and it'll never understand what you're telling it. But we'll be watching behind the scenes. We'll give you a call or whatever that says, hey, it looks like you still have one waiting. Okay. You have anything else to show?
Well, I just say, as far as forms, I put some links on here as far as hotel occupancy tax exempt forms and things like that. So you can click on it. It takes you right to the form, and type it out and print it and take that with or whatnot. So and those are just associated to the company notes page.
Yeah, and the hotel occupancy form, very, very important, because before when we were doing TAC cards or whatever, you guys got this form when you picked up the TAC card. But since there's not really a TAC card so much anymore, this is where you'll go. Every traveler needs to take this with them because we are not supposed to pay any hotel occupancy tax. And this is the way. You have to present it to the hotel. If the hotel will not grant you that exemption, you need to tell us that when you come back, but you have to at least try. Yes?
I know I'm your favorite person. If we are making changes within the system, do we pay $7.50 every single time we make a change?
No, it should be the same one fee. If you go in and you say you make air, car, and hotel all at one time, it's one $7.50 fee. If you go in and you just make one air reservation, as long as you add your car and add your hotel to that existing reservation, that same $7.50 fee applies. If you go outside of that original reservation and you make a separate car or separate hotel reservation, then you're going to start to incur additional fees.
If I change something on my car reservation, that's still part of the original $7.50.
Right, you don't get charged again.
So if you get the flight approved, and then you go back and add the hotel, you wouldn't be charged.
Right, you wouldn't be charged an additional fee.
How do you go back and add them?
You come up to the trip for upcoming trips. You click change trip. And it takes you in, and you can add your car, add hotel. So just adding it here. As far as another misunderstanding as far as these go, with the adding the car and adding the hotel links, click add car, add hotel on the flight segment or where you're wanting to add the car or add the hotel. Like for instance, if we needed the car in Houston, I would want to click one of these two links. So it adds it at my arrival city, Houston. If I scroll down to the bottom here and I add car, add hotel, it's going to add it in Dallas where I'm coming back home, which I see this fairly common. People go, oh, well, I clicked add a car, add a hotel. Well, you need to click it at the city that you're arriving into, not the city you're going home to. So that's the difference between these adding a car and adding a hotel. If you click up here at the arrival city, it actually will grab the date range until your following flight. So it'll automatically populate the full stay of where you're at. If you click on the bottom one, it'll make it for one day in the city that you're coming home to, and you can ultimately change it all, but it would require you to actually have caught that it had done that and then manipulate it all back for what you're actually looking for. So best practice is if you're needing to add a car or hotel, to click on it on the initial flight arriving into your destination.
Now, if you'll just leave that open, Jason, we'll make a couple of reservations while we're standing here.
Okay. They ain't going to get bought on
Oh,
that
darn
car.
it, no car. Yes.
I have a question about international flights. A lot of times, you know, the flights will have internal flights within a city, country. It won't just be round trip.
Right.
And it can be complicated and difficult to find airlines, you know, like American's not going to
Scheduling and things, right.
So there's One World and all that. So is that going to be possible on this system? You know, multiple cities and multiple carriers.
Yeah, you could do multi-segment trips. You can do, I mean, if you're kind of using the system to kind of guide you as far as your flights, so you're just wanting to put, you know, your start point, end point, and then let it kind of help you get there, you can do that. Or if there's, you know specifically from this point to this point to this point to this point exactly what carriers and stuff you want, it can get as narrowed down as that. It does let you do with the multiple segment, and I believe it lets you add up to 8 segments. So you just keep clicking add a segment until you can't add anymore, and the system will even validate if you start in one city and try to end in another city. Say you flew out of Dallas Love Field but returned to DFW, the system's going to say, hey, you're not starting and stopping at the same place. Are you aware? Yes, no, okay. And it'll let you go on, but it's going to, you know, bring that to your attention. So it's validating that you're not starting and stopping in the same place.
Also, like if let's say you're leaving from Dallas-Fort Worth going to Beijing, there are many options, cities, connections, you know, LA, Chicago, whatever, New York. Is it going to give you all those options, or is it just going to give you, you know?
It's going to look for, the system's looking for, it's taking into account cost, travel duration, connections, the number of connections. If there's, usually it's going to start with, you know, fewest stops for the less cost is ultimately what it's looking for. It's looking for the most expedited way to get there for as little cost as possible. But you can expand it to where it's like, you know, you can broaden it up to where instead of a plus or minus 2 hour window, plus or minus 9 hours. So then it's going to give you the flexibility of that entire day, where it might take into account flights that may not have been available in the previous request. But you can, it'll probably show more flights than you'll probably care to look through, as far as depending on some of the connections and things like that. So, I mean, basically it's pulling whatever the travel system results are by default based on what you put in is what it's going to provide to you as far as flight options.
Can you put in flights yourself? Like if you found, you know, you want to connect through certain points, can you plug that in?
You can.
You can put in the cities.
Yeah, you can put in the cities. Right. If you're looking, best case, if you're looking for a specific flight on a specific carrier, then I would specify the airline and narrow it down that way. As long as you're looking for, you know, if you're looking for multiple carriers, then that's probably not going to work that well. But if it's like you're looking for everything on American and you're looking for these specific flights, then you'll specify the airline, and then as long as you put your times closest to what you're looking for, then those should for you. When you specify the airline, it does a more in-depth search on that one particular airline versus doing that same general search inclusive of all of the airlines. So it'll do more in-depth, give you more options. You'll see some duplicated flights as far as connections, because instead of just showing you the one connection with the 35-minute layover, it's going to show you that one with, and then another one with an hour and a half, or another one with 2 hours, and depending on what flight options there are.
Okay, we have about 5 more minutes, so if there's any questions about how the system works, we want to get that through, because the other questions pertaining to travel processes or guidelines, and if you'll email those to us, and for those of you who are watching from Discovery Park or from the Health Center and or from the system office, or maybe you were watching from your desk, please send us a note to bsc@untsystem.edu so we can give you credit for this particular training. Yes, ma'am, you had a question.
Just a real fast question. The per diem receipt only, does that take effect now? When is that?
Yeah, the per diem receipts required really takes effect now, but please don't go away thinking, oh my gosh, I've got 10 people in travel status. We're not going to be able to make that. Just do what you can. We're trying to do what we call a soft launch of these guidelines. We're going to work with you on every one. And yes, there will be times when you lose your receipt. Talk with your travel team and they'll help guide you along the way. Yes.
With this, we've got a traveler that's flying to Switzerland this summer. We've already booked the ticket, so that's not an issue. But I think he's flying from DFW on, I think it's American, and switching to Air Canada. Would this site find flights like that? The site we went through was Travelocity, and it found this flight. Would this do the same?
Travelocity is powered by Sabre. Sabre is the same GDS system that we utilize. It's the same system that this system is pulling from. So it's going to pull and mix match those carriers where you choose to select those. It'll show them combined with just the American options as they sell their options with their code share flights or their partner flights. And then if there's an instance where it can combine carriers, then you have that option to combine carriers on here as well. Okay. The only ones that you're limited to as far as combining with anybody else is Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines you can't combine with any other carrier. So when you go in and you search their flights and they come back and you take a Southwest flight for the outbound, you'll see that on the return flight options, everybody except Southwest will have a little gray X through their options. So you can see their schedule, but you can't select them in conjunction with the Southwest outbound flight. Okay. So that's the only limitation. If you have to do one of those instances where it's Southwest, out and a different carrier coming back, that would unfortunately have to be booked as 2 separate reservations. Okay. And that's a limitation imposed by Southwest Airlines, not one that we're putting on you or one the tool's putting on you.
Okay.
Liz or Jason, I want to make sure these people leave here today understanding the $750 fee they will never see on their screen. It's going to happen separate and apart. So when you book your flight, and if it's a $230 flight, on your Cognos report, you're going to see the $230, and then we'll be adding a $750 for those particular incidents on a separate journal entry. Okay? If you ever have a question, again, when you look at your Cognos, which is your expense report, you're trying to figure out, hey, what's the $750 from? Remember that it's associated with that flight, and we'll try to make sure that the information with that journal entry is easy for you to know. Yes.
Debbie.
Hold on, Thomas. Go ahead.
There was a sheet going around with people signing in.
Yeah, we'll get the sign-in sheet to you. Go ahead, Thomas.
Tax exempt forms for in-state hotels, will the travelers still need to take those with them?
Yes, and that's on that front side that Jason showed you here, the hotel occupancy tax exemption form. If you'll get that printed for your traveler, they should take that with them each time.
Thank you.
Other questions anywhere? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the meals. Are you going to be scrutinizing that, or is it just for documentation only?
Meal scrutinization. That sounds like a nasty term or something. We will be reviewing the receipts associated with every voucher that crosses our desk. So again, remember, we're looking to see, did someone, the DEP ID holder, approve the meals that we see? If we see receipts, let's say they add up to $100, but the voucher is only asking for a reimbursement of $50, we're going to go check. There's at least $100 worth of receipts. They only want $50. We're going to pay them $50. If the other came through, though, and you were asking for $100, but there were only $50 worth of receipts, we're going to ask you where are the rest of your receipts. You're going to say, I lost them. We're going to say, you lose them every time. And then we're going to scrutinize you a little bit more. But if it's an occasional loss, I mean, we all lose paper, right? So we'll work with you. But we are just simply, we're not the police. We're trying to verify that what you are asking for reimbursement, we have some type of receipt. If you look in this room, there are some auditors in here. They like for us to have documentation for everything we spend. We're spending somebody else's money, so I got to make sure that what you're doing will get through an audit.
Are the times still going to matter, the 7 noon and 6 p.m.?
Not from our perspective, because again, per diem is where it says the 7, blah, blah, blah. The person that's approving your voucher is the person that's authorizing us to expend those funds. Now, the one thing we didn't talk about here today is that there are still some rules associated with state travel. There are very few of you out there who are authorized to travel with state dollars. But if you do travel with state dollars, you have to answer this that you're traveling on state dollars, and it'll lead you through and will only allow you to book a flight according to the state rules. It'll only allow you to book a hotel per the state guidelines and so on and so forth. If ever in doubt, please call your travel team. They're there for you. They will know how this system operates, and they will be able to help you, and they'll keep Jason and his team honest for our contract prices in the background. Yes?
When they're doing the meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, what if they throw in snacks and everything in between?
When they throw in snacks and everything else, if your receipts match and your DEP ID holder says pay, we pay. Everybody's always worried about that last cup of coffee they have to have.
Well, I'll put snack on my sheet.
You're going to put snack on your sheet. Now remember, for those of you who are just travel coordinators, you need to make sure that the DEP ID holder is understanding this process. We've asked them to come to this training, and we'll do additional trainings in the future, but we really need your help to make sure that they understand. Very, very important, when they hit approve, we're paying.
When does this activate? You were saying there's a pilot.
Okay, you all have the Concur website because he gave it to you. It's just the secret, you don't know what your login is. Some of you will go try to do it. I know you will. Rhonda Hacker will be on there as soon as you get back to her.
I'm going to call you at like 12:30 and say I wasn't able to.
Yeah, well, keep going. Keep trying. If you want to be a pilot, go over there and talk to Celia. Celia's over there. For those of you that are at Discovery Park, if you want to be a pilot, Deb Curry, Brittany Bridges, and Tina Coleman are down there. Go tap them on the shoulder. It doesn't mean you're going to automatically be in the pilot, but they'll bring your names back, and I guess we'll draw out of a hat or something. But no, we're looking for people who, the departments that really have some travel coming up and that are frequent travelers. It does us no good to test the program with, like if you were going with me, I'm not traveling anywhere, so I wouldn't make a good pilot. I can't fly a plane either. So anyway, that's my lame joke for the day. I'll try no more.
Right, when we do budget checks and we go through the process, it immediately encumbers and hits our account.
Right, there's no encumbrance with this system. The encumbrance is in Concur. It's in the module that we don't own, and I'm trying really hard to get it, because when we do that, when we book, it'll help us do all of the encumbrance. It'll do all wonderful things. Like I said, the best, it'll tie up that bow and bring you a soda. Well, actually, it won't bring you a soda, but we can wish. But that's what we're working towards.
If we book I know you said if we book the airfare, we don't have to put that on a travel voucher later.
Correct.
But for car rental and hotel, would we still, or would that be everything we would have to do?
Think of this in terms of what we pay for, we don't need to hear from you again. So if we're paying for your airfare, you're done. We got it. We have no idea what you've done on meals, so you have to send us a voucher. We don't know what your hotel bill was because we didn't pay for it, so we need a voucher. If you didn't get the Enterprise rental car, but you went with Avis, you got to send us a voucher so we can reimburse you. That's the mechanism. That's how you trigger to tell us you owe us money.
Okay, so even if we book the hotel through that, we still have to include that on the voucher.
Correct. Because we do not have any kind of direct payment to the hotels in here yet. But the travel team knows what I want, and that is to make it easy on you so you don't have to do, well, you're always going to have to come back with meals because I don't know what you ate. But the rest of it, we want to make it as easy as possible, and we're working to get that tool.
What if people were using a TAC card before? What do they do now, like for hotels?
IBT, individually billed travel card. On our BSC website, it tells you how to apply for one. Some people are still afraid to apply for the IBT because they think it hits their personal credit. We've been told that it does not. They do what's called a soft credit check, and it does not apply to your credit. You are responsible for paying the bill, but you...
It also has late fees, so if you're not reimbursed in time, then you're getting the late fees.
You will be reimbursed in time here, but we can't reimburse you unless you turn in a travel voucher. That's the mistake people make. An IBT is in your name, but you must give us a voucher so we can give you money back.
If you hit the cycle just right, then you could still, because we've gotten, that's why I use my personal card, because I feel like the state card is the same as my personal card, except it doesn't hit my credit.
Except the
Lines then.
state card will not allow you to get some discounted airfare or discounted rates unless you use the IBT. That's the reason we say use it with the IBT if you can. If you'll notice, we're not coming after you if you use your own personal card. We're not coming after you if you don't use CTP. But we will all get the best rates if we shop together, and that's through this method. Any other questions? It's really time for us to go. If you have other questions, please email them. We'll gather them and get them back out to you.
Go.